Now, the higher the volume, the more beneficial implementing a repeatable process is. Because that way you're able to share the work among more people who haven't had to just learn through experience.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process. Welcome to the next episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers, and in each of these episodes, I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with process practitioners, those that are putting business process management into practice day in and day out at various organizations, whether it's from an academic realm or lens, I should say, whether it's from a consulting lens or sometimes talking with individuals that are working internally at small, medium, large organizations. And in today's conversation, I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Garrie Irons. Now, Garrie is a senior business analyst, has worked in quite a diverse range of organizations throughout Australia. So very excited for this conversation. Garrie is also involved with the IIBA and has been for quite a number of years now. So has a huge network and a wealth of knowledge. So Garrie, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me along, Daniel. It's great to be here.
So I guess the question that helps to set up the rest of our conversation and something that the audience loves to understand before we dive into the other topics is how did you find yourself in the world of business process management? Was it something you were formally qualified in, or is it something that you kind of stumbled in? And take us on a bit of a journey leading up to what you're doing today.
Yeah. So I studied engineering between school and starting work. And while I didn't finish that, it does represent my way of thinking, a pretty structured and systems way of thinking, and thinking in more than one dimension.
Right.
When I left my study, I was employed in the environment sector doing water monitoring and water measuring. And that was at a time when that whole industry and sector was moving literally from having recording instruments out on the side of a riverbank that had a pen on a piece of paper with a mechanical wind-up clock. And they were moving to this new world of recording things digitally, of having digital sensors. So as part of that transformation, that digitalization transformation, we had to actually go back to the first principles of why do we do the thing we do? What do the instruments we have at each site do? What steps need to be done to set them up, to kick them off and get them to record, and then for some technician to come back and gather that information? And then how do we process that information within our organisation? And that was my first job in a professional workplace, in a department that doesn't exist anymore called the Department of Water Resources in New South Wales. And, it was a vital cog in doing things like responding to floods and helping irrigators get the water they need. So while my start point was pretty low maturity in more flowchart and those kind of diagrams, as I progressed through my career, I went looking for better models, and I found business process modelling to be quite effective, even when talking to people in sectors like sewage treatment operations or corrections operation, working in jails. It didn't matter what discipline it was. Business process modelling was a nice sweet spot of technical richness, but also being able to be understood by the client.
Right. And what would you say, over the years, is the biggest drivers or motivators for an organisation to adopt a BPM approach? Because, there's quite a diverse range of process maturity out there. Some organisations are diving into the latest technology like process mining and robotic process automation and various solutions. Other organisations have nothing documented down, everything's still in the minds of the people. So what takes an organisation from that point where they're not managing their processes to deciding this is something we need to do and we need to start managing our processes better?
And certainly in my career, I've seen quite a few drivers there, right? And one is moving from that really skilled craftsman mentality of working, and it doesn't matter what the work is, right? Where we bring in a school leaver or an apprentice age employee and they grow in place to become this deep font of all knowledge because they've worked in that same place for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, right? And I've, in recent times, seen people who retire having worked in the same place for 60 years. And It's just, wow, there goes so much corporate knowledge, right? And at the same time, throughout my career, we've had digitization, digitalization, digital transformation, adoption of agile approaches, right? All these different drivers. We've had, employee relation rationalization that has put whole new drivers on how lean a workforce needs to be.
Right.
So in all those kind of endeavors, people need to pull out what steps need to happen, what decisions need to happen between the steps, what actions need to be done during each of those steps. And it hasn't mattered if it's to do with casualization of work or transforming the technology stack on which the work is done. And I mean, I've seen places move from pen and paper through to, early digital, through to full web 3.0 technology. And it's the same thing all the time. You still need to know, what does the business exist to do? What actions need to happen for that customer to get value? And what are the decisions points? Which steps in here are we really adding value? And which steps in here can we really scrutinize and say, hey, with some more and better technology, can we take the person out of that step? A lot of quality control has really moved that way, that you can get a machine to do some of those quality assessments and only throw things out to the human operator in the real exceptions now. But that comes back to knowing what's a fail and what do I just let go through to the next step.
Yes, right. And being involved in various sort of transformation projects or digitalization, do you have examples of, success stories or case studies where an organisation adopted BPM in whatever, it's such a broad topic, but whatever, in whatever way, shape or form, and it has delivered significant value? Because I think that's something that some of the audience that are listening to this podcast will be asking is, we want to know who's put BPM into practice and who's doing it well and who's doing it successfully, and what does that actually look like, and what results does that return?
So I've definitely worked in some quite regulated environments. I worked for a decade in the jail sector of New South Wales. Okay. And while I was working there, they went from that, grow an employee in place mentality to very rapidly implementing a casualized workforce. Okay. So they've gone from an era when the person sitting at this this control station, at this desk, who's making literally life and death kind of decisions, deciding whether to let a certain person out of a jail or not, deciding whether a certain person should have access to certain items or not. So they've gone from having really skilled, knowledgeable people who've worked in that context for 5 or 10 years making those decisions, to bringing in a person who may have never set foot on that premises ever before and being told, there's all the information you need to know, and here's how to make every decision you'll need to make while you're sitting in this seat today. And tomorrow when you go to work, you'll be in a totally different workplace, making totally different decisions, still in that mindset of you're wearing a custodial officer's uniform, and that other person is, asking you permission to do a thing or asking you to provide them with something.
Mm-hmm.
And in that setting, it was very important to get down to that style mentality of, okay, we've got so many boxes in front of a person having to make a decision, and they've got clear guidance where to go if there's any uncertainty about how to make that decision, or if they come to an exception. And just that one thing alone did allow Corrective Services New South Wales to save a significant amount of money from their salaries spend year on year to operate their whole system of jails, of court cell complexes, of inmate transfers.
Yeah, great.
And that's a pretty confronting environment to work in. And I had to work in that environment in an era of pretty disgruntled and concerned union representation, and have a method of communicating with all those agitated stakeholders where, hey, these are the steps, right? If I'm missing something and you think the job is more important than that, now is your time to speak up and tell me what's missing from this checklist, what's missing from this decision process. And that was sort of my real trial by fire in escalating my process diagramming maturity. I came out of there into more contract-oriented work, and I applied, the similar kind of maturity at large-scale places like Services Australia, where, again, it's, okay, if we can really get these questions down pat and the decision points down pat, then for a telephone support line that's taking 1,000 calls a day from citizens on just one cause for concern, then if we can get 1,000 citizens to reduce their time spent on phone by 10 seconds, well, there's 10,000 seconds a day. That adds up pretty quick, right? So that's pretty close to 1,000 hours of citizens having their productive time back per week, and 1,000 hours less demand on your workforce per week.
Yes, right.
So anything you can do to improve the degree to which that information, those checklists, that decision-making process can be understood in real time by that person trying to engage on the phone, the better outcome it's going to be. BPM type of activities, both from the person on the phone to helping program the voice response system that feeds them the right customer. So you can balance the skill sets across that whole customer service network. Okay, and flow the customer demand to a right-sized team of people. So that business process modelling flows in that whole thing, right, of making the computer system work, putting the right information in front of the call centre people at the right time, and guiding them through asking the right questions of the customer.
Right. And would you say that the high volume processes present the biggest opportunity for a return? Because I think that's one question I get for people that are embarking on this journey is, where do we begin?
Well, I think the best place to begin is the problem in front of you.
Right.
If you start where your engaged people are, they will be your process champions.
Right, okay.
And it doesn't matter whether they're already effective and good at their job or whether they're stumbling around in the dark. If they're coming for some support in documenting that process and they see some wins, even if it's in clarifying their thinking, if it's giving them a better capacity to collaborate with their teammates, a better way of talking to their suppliers around what additional service they want, a better way to communicate with their customers so that by the time their customer comes to them, the customer knows, I need 3 pay stubs and my driver's license and 2 phone bills before I come back next time. Oh, look, the customer comes prepared. The customer has a better experience, and the employee, is able to deliver fantastic customer service and come away feeling good about that. So start where you are. If you're looking around for where to start, yes, there is always going to be value in looking for either the high value but low volume work items or the really high volume, low value work items.
Right.
Either of those, if you make a 5% improvement, you get the economy of scale. Right? Now, the higher the volume, the more beneficial implementing a repeatable process is. Because that way you're able to share the work among more people who haven't had to just learn through experience, right? Because they'll be able to take it on readily from quality, easy-to-consume documentation.
Yes. Yep. Right. No, that's good.
And that's where, if you do focus on that volume, you'll get that immediate payoff quite quickly.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And when talking about, I guess, sustained success, because I'm aware of organizations that they'll adopt BPM, senior leaders behind it. They've got sponsorship buy-in for a couple of years, senior leadership then move on, and then the process, practitioners end up leaving and moving on. And then all of a sudden, process is a bit of a dirty word at some organizations. So are people, I guess looking at sustained success, what are the ingredients? Is people the most important one? We need to bring people along for the journey. How do you do that? Maybe when you're in an organization where, it is a bit of a dirty word.
Yeah, and certainly, you get different things that are flavour of the month for a while. Like when I say work, total quality management was a real buzzword, right? And process modelling fit in with quality management, right? Because it helps you have those repeatable and effective processes. And you do have that problem when you've got this one executive level champion who comes in and they make these massive changes, often through implementing things like TQM or effective business process modelling or just effective documentation techniques for the way the work of the business happens. And then they leave. And as you say, if people have been conforming to someone whipping them, then they're going to revert back to what their preferred experience would be. So it is important, from my perspective, that we find a way to reward the positive uptake and focus on rewarding the positive uptake and the recalcitrants or the late adopters or whatever. The best way to get them on board is through showing the fantastic results of adopting a good technique, right? And sometimes that can mean listening to their concerns and tailoring your modelling, right? Oh, you don't like, 2 words per box. Okay, it's not what I've been taught is good, but hey, if it helps get you on board, if we need a sentence for some of these boxes, we need a sentence.
Yeah, right.
We need pictures, not boxes, and that helps get some adoption. Well, let's do that, right? If we need to have the work instruction in call-out boxes inside the process model, that makes a bit more of a challenging maintenance proposition, but it gives you better adoption. You do that, right? Because that's the win you need. You need enthusiastic people who can consume the product, who get value out of having documented the product. Otherwise, you, as was often the case in TQM world, end up with a fantastic bookcase of processes that no one ever looks at and don't reflect how we even work anyway.
Yes.
What's the point of that? If I'm going to spend 2 weeks documenting a process for you, I want you to pull that out of the bookcase and show every trainee who comes past your desk so they learn how to do the job right. And if one of those steps changes, well, actually, I want it to be easy for that team lead to probably, as much as possible, update the step themselves and put it through whatever governance process exists. And if they're using a tool that's too complicated for that, well, first, why? Right? And sometimes to really work at scale, you do need complicated tools. So if there is a good reason for why, then hey, let's make the way of getting that box updated as simple and straightforward as possible for a person whose job isn't updating process diagrams, but is delivering excellent service to a customer.
Yes.
Great value, or minimizing costs, or eliminating, non-conformant output, right? What is their focus? It's not updating process diagrams. So if you need to do it from time to time, make it easy. Or make it easy for them to engage the person whose job it is to do that process model authoring.
Right. And when, like, obviously senior leaders are, very key in terms of getting that buy-in and sponsorship. And you're talking there about a little bit about, adapting our approach based on the person that we're trying to bring along the journey. What's your advice or your recommendations for us as process practitioners for, I guess, bringing senior leaders along for the journey? I find that maybe sometimes we can get really sort of, I guess, bogged down with detail and terminology and things that to the senior leaders, it's not resonating with the things that they care about.
A lot of craftsmen, right? And I put, good documentation authors in that category, are very proud of outputs. Executive leaders are more concerned with outcomes.
Right. That's great.
And we need to be able to make that leap that, okay, having documented this process, our outcome is we deliver more repeatable and reliable work to the standard that you're looking for as an executive, right? And we need to tie back that, well, what is the outcome of the non-conformance to the documented process, right? Well, actually, the outcome of that is you don't have oversight, knowledge, insight to the way the work is done. If the way the work is done is different to the way the work has been documented as being done. And again, we need to not be worried so much about that pain point, but what's the outcome of that pain point? Is the outcome that, we're going to have an increase in customer dissatisfaction or a decrease in satisfied customers? Are our call attendance times going to be increased, right? We're going to stop meeting our service level agreements. And more to the point, that's still a bit of an output. What's the outcome of not meeting the service level agreement?
Right.
That is the thing that will let the process author go back to that executive and say, hey, because we've got these non-conformances, because we've got the deviations from the agreed and documented process, we've got these consequences. Are you worried about those consequences or not? Right? And put it back in their court. Are these consequences that your staff need to be concerned about or not? While they are, well, my recommendation for how to avoid these consequences is take these steps in fixing the quality of our documented information. of making a documented process more closely reflect the executed process, or finding out, well, why are people avoiding this process step? What's the reason for that? Okay, because maybe we need them to come back in line with the documented process. We know they're falling off it. Is there a reason? Whether to move away from the documented process, or does that mean less reliable work, the documented process is just too clunky? Well, how do we make conforming to the documented process a more natural path?
Yep. Yeah, right.
So there's a lot of room there in actual process engineering rather than process documenting.
Yes, right. And yeah, I'd imagine that like you would have seen, BPM process management implemented well, and some places maybe implemented not so well. What are some of the sort of bigger mistakes that the audience needs to be aware of as they're, maybe they're transitioning into a new role at an organisation, maybe they're heading up a centre of excellence? What are some of those mistakes?
One of the really big mistakes is getting the tool that's not fit for purpose for the problem.
Right, okay.
So, for example, sticking with drawing software, when the scope of your problem is big enough that you actually get really good value out of an enterprise modelling solution.
Right, okay.
And, drawing software is easy to use. It is easy to do version, iterate, but it's cumbersome to maintain. It's cumbersome to keep, all your sequence of diagrams, the outputs of diagram A being the inputs of diagram B, and so on. And actual, it becomes very mandrolic to maintain that library.
Right.
At the extreme other end, you get some really fantastic enterprise level process solutions. But if you go too far to that extreme, they've got fantastic governance and version control solutions, but that all comes with overhead.
Right.
So if you go, too far in either extreme, you're going to have pain. The activity you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And from my experience, that mismatch has been the biggest cause of pain in organisations.
Okay.
So we end up with, massive libraries of disconnected diagrams in SharePoint farms that when we implement a new tool, how many diagrams do we need to change now?
Right. Yeah.
When we rationalize two job roles into one, how many diagrams do we need to update now? Okay. Yet if we try to go for a really high maturity tool for too small an organisation, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to have a high governance overhead in needing a governance board and people to in system do review and acceptance of documents and those kind of things, right? It's going to need a more niche skill set to do the diagram authoring, which is expensive. But by the time you scale that up, bring in the right skill set of content author, your outcome is in efficiency, in that they can iterate through those drawings in a feature-rich tool much more quickly. They know which levers to pull to get those process changes reviewed, endorsed and accepted and published back onto a really easy-to-consume web experience that the person who's never sat at this desk before and needs to engage with customers in volatile circumstances, they can read that process and they can deliver the right outcome time and time again.
That's great. That's really good. And you would be aware of, I guess, trends in the process community and the journey that BPM as a management approach has been over the past 10, 15, 20 years. And what trends are you noticing now? And what do you think the next 2, 3, 5 years looks like for organisations? Where should they be investing their time?
Look, I really think there's a lot of value coming out now from joining information data mining activity, and machine learning kind of activities to business process modelling, and letting people run simulations, right? We go and mine our real world business systems, our ERPs or our customer record management systems for, where are our dwell times? Where are our queues forming? And if we tweak some process steps and run it through a simulator, what would happen to those dwell times? What would happen to those end-to-end customer experiences? So there's some real exciting things going on there. And certainly the last time I was at Service Australia, applying data mining to service management tools and pulling back the lived experience for large volumes of citizens and consumers, and playing that back to those government organisations who rely on Services Australia to be a shared services provider, opens the door to really powerful conversations about how to give better citizen experience.
Yeah.
About ensuring people get their needs met more quickly.
And it certainly does expose a lot.
Out of government, it really is the experience that when you get down to those frontline workers, they are all pretty much passionate about delivering fantastic outcomes, right? And they just want their tools to work right. They just want to know, when I see a person with a set of conditions I've never had to deal with before, how do I make that decision? How do I know who to escalate this, challenging situation to? So that I can get the work off my plate, but also that person can get their outcome a little bit more quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, back to that, scale of volume kind of question, right? Working in those environments, the scales they deal with, it really is a rewarding experience. Right? To be on the side of a team that's implementing something that makes this tiny improvement per call or per interaction. And then you look at the fact that, but we do that 5,000 times a week, Garrie.
Totally.
And you go, that was worth doing.
Yes, yeah. It's very exposing, I feel, and maybe potentially some hurdles there to overcome with different stakeholders and people, because it's looking at the data, it's looking at the actual data in the systems. You can't hide from that.
Absolutely, right. And in my circumstance, I could lean on data scientists and data engineers to pull data out of these massive systems of government, right? And go, look, the calls come in at this rate and they all get to here and then they stop. Why do they stop here? Our people are overworked. Well, why are our people overworked? Because they don't know what decision to make. They don't have a good enough tool to support them in doing their job. There's some resource they need that they don't have. And it might sound unbelievable. Clear documentation of process highlights those pain points. And then you can ask those executives, so this pain point is leading to an extra 5 days in the decision-making process for somebody who's waiting for, some life-changing decision.
That's right.
Is that not worth investing some amount of money in?
Yes. Yeah.
Look, for the delay that's causing, we've got a real clear business case here to spend some amount of money to fix that problem.
That's right. And to your point about compliance before, like it could be a matter of life and death for some consumers or customers of an organisation, whether it's in hospital, healthcare, airlines.
Yep.
It's compliance becomes a very serious thing.
Yes, that's absolutely the case in so many sectors. Right? And it might be that no one's doing anything wrong, but by the time the decision was made, you just think about fires and floods, right? People are trying to make decisions about, where do I send the fire engine? Where do I send the rescue boat or the rescue helicopter? Right? Now, we really want to get those decisions right.
That's right.
And we want to be able to make them quickly. Okay? Because that means those people might get off their roof 3 hours quicker.
Yes. Yep.
Right?
That's
or
right.
Even better, we might be in a better position to tell them, hey, your house is going to be flooded. You need to leave now so that we're not trying to pull you off a roof in 12 hours' time.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And it's amazing that, all those things can be influenced by really good and effective, business modeling in a way that even volunteers can comprehend the diagram they're looking at, right? As soon as you go to the SES or the Rural Fire Service or the Ambulance Association, St John's Ambulance Association, so many times these diagrams need to be consumed by naive people who've never seen them before. Right? So you need them to be step. Here's the things to consider. Tick, tick, tick.
That's right.
It's quite incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's really good. Now, for the audience that's listening to this conversation, so obviously in a 30, 40-minute conversation, we can only sort of scrape the surface on so many topics, but where I'm sure that you piqued the interest of at least a number of those that are listening or will be listening to this conversation. I've certainly been taking a lot of notes and gleaning a lot from this conversation myself, but where do they go to learn more? Because I do have people approach me every now and then saying, I'm working as a process design lead in this organization. There isn't like a wider team or a support network. I want to connect with people, or I want to learn more about process management, process transformation, and what I should be doing, or at least having sounding boards. And where should the audience go to learn more about this topic and what value it can drive in their organization?
So in my career, I've turned to quite a few avenues, right? And the really positive ones have been reaching out to professional associations. So we can see here, I'm currently celebrating being Volunteer of the Year for Asia Pacific, and that's in association with my work with the International Institute of Business Analysis. And business process modelling is an absolutely core and fundamental technique for business analysis. And if you reach out to the IIBA, you can access a fantastic network of passionate volunteers and really skilled people who know how to get the most out of business process modelling. But by all means, we're just one professional association. There's also the Business Architecture Guild and even the Association of Business Process Management Professionals, right? There are literally associations for anything. So if you look around, you will find an association that has, they might have a little bit more to do with the line of work you do. If you're in the utilities sector, or you're in fast-moving consumer goods, or in government, or retail, or banking, or finance. Now, the other thing is there's all these vendors of tools, and they do want all of their customers and all of the users of their tools to get fantastic outcomes from using their tool. So that's not so much the people who sell drawing software, because You can draw anything with those packages. But as soon as you reach out to the vendor of a service management tool, of a customer relationship management tool, or a specialist process modeling tool like Bizarre or Holocentric, or, there's quite a few more. They have rich wikis. They have, fantastic material available to help people understand business process generally, and then how to apply that general knowledge to using this tool to get the very best outcomes. And some of those tools, they're free to use for process modeling, right? Because some of those tools, they're focused on process execution as their way of generating revenue. So they're fantastic sources to go to improve your process modeling maturity and to learn techniques and approaches. I've gotten a lot of value out of some of those tools.
That's great. That's good. And connecting with you personally, if after this conversation, maybe the audience has some burning questions on their mind that they're like, I wish they covered this. I want to get in touch with Garrie. How do they do that? So
my best professional networking platform is LinkedIn. My name is pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. There's not many namesakes. I'm fortunate in that aspect. So if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, you look for the Garrie Irons associated with the International Institute of Business Analysis, and you'll find me that way. Or reach out to the Institute of Institute of Business Analysis Australia chapter. You can reach out and contact me that way as well, again through LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter with my name as my Twitter handle, and I'm happy to engage with people on Twitter around business analysis, process modeling, and any other form of modeling that I've engaged with as a business analysis practitioner.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Well, Garrie, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time and having this conversation with me. As I mentioned, I've been taking a lot of notes, gleaning a lot from this conversation, and I'm sure the audience has as well. And if you are listening to this and you do want to connect with Garrie or the International Institute of Business Analysis, and please reach out, jump online. You'll be able to find the website or connect with Garrie on LinkedIn, and he'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. But Garrie, again, thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege.
Thank you very much for your time, Daniel. It's been great to be here.